call your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, and maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it, folks. So let's waste no time. Oh, yeah. Let's get to it. Story number 1. What are we doing to feed those locally who cannot afford to feed themselves, cannot afford the food locally? WFMJ has a report that sparked the attention on local hunger after a local man, Ken Mays, bought $2,300 worth of KFC to feed people in need. At least that's what the article says. Now, the report made it in because it puts the attention on local hunger stories and how local businesses can play a part in meeting the needs of those in need if need to be fed if people are willing to spend the money. That's why story number 1 made it this week. Story number 2. Grocery store in Milton Township set to close. Brandon Cantwell has a report out of the Vindicator published October 8th out of Milton Township in what appears to be the loss of a locally owned Sparkle Market due to decreasing sales. Now, the report explains how several convenient and dollar stores not too far away, plus the crushing blow brought on by COVID-19, has somehow put a dagger in the local business market there. That's sort of the convenience stores, COVID-19, crushing blow, moving in. And on top of that, you don't have enough money to get through when you lost money. Now, reduced staff and reduced hours can't even save these businesses, even in this business climate. What's going on right now. This highlights an ongoing effort to reduce the growing impact that dollar stores are having on locally owned retail and grocery stores as local residents look to save money. This is all across the board. Now, this story is gaining steam because local businesses are taking notice. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3. Warren is in the news due to streetlights and the wasting of taxpayer money. A report out of WFMJ explains how a Warren councilman's stance on wasting money has made headlines. The report goes on to say that he claims that Ohio Edison is doing a poor to miserable job maintaining their system, and he wants a refund according to the article. Now, lack of streetlights seemed to be the reason for the complaints. Now, the report goes on to say that Ohio Edison defended its record by stating that they will adhere to complaints and replace the bulbs. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. Will low interest loans for businesses work downtown? David Scolding has a report out of Youngstown published October 8th explaining how Governor Mike DeWine has asked the U.S. Small Business Administration to provide low-interest loans to businesses impacted by the May 28th gas explosion at the former Realty Tower building in downtown Youngstown. Now, the entire story explains how the explosion financially hit the businesses nearby and how they've had a hard time recovering recently, thus getting this story to the top 8. That's my story number 4 made it this week. Story number 5. Still an ongoing effort to end flooding in Boardman. Push goes on. Dan Pomley has a report published October 5th out of Boardman explaining how officials plan to fight the flooding problems in the township after $47 million in federal funds will be injected into communities affected by flooding in phases within the next 3 to 5 years. Now, the report goes on to explain how $3 million will be awarded to Boardman for Phase 1 flooding. The article goes on to explain where other funds will be coming from in an attempt to eliminate flooding in central Boardman, along with other parts that have been impacted by flooding. Now, this is the first time a project of this scale has been awarded a flooding mitigation assistance grant in Ohio. The story is long and filled with information on what is being done in Boardman to prevent flooding. So story number 5 made it this week. Story number 6, what happened in Ellsworth? Ed Ryan has a report out of the Mediator published October 8th highlighting what took place after 4 people lost their life in a morning explosion on Huxley Road in Ellsworth Township. Now, what caused the explosion is what got the story in, because this is not the first time a story like this has made headlines. The entire report explains an explosion that endangered every residential property in the vicinity, thus getting this story into the top 8. That's why story number 6 also made it to the top 2 this week. Big. Story number 7 and the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week on Columbus or Indigenous People Day, whatever you want to call it, the weekend of Indigenous or Columbus Day. If you're Italian, you may say Columbus. If you're Indian or some other culture, some other race, you may say Indigenous People Day. So whatever you prefer. Story number 7. Grants continue to serve as a lifeline for some businesses after COVID-19. Grants have been a lifeline for many local businesses. Valley cemeteries are what got this story in, because they will receive part of a $104,000 grant program from the Ohio Department of Commerce's Division of Real Estate and Professional Licensing. Now, the local report goes on to explain how the funds will be used for maintenance projects. A number of local cemeteries were approved for the funds, thus getting this story into the top 8. That's why story number 7 also made it to the top this week. Big. Story number 8 in the top local headline and developing news story that made it this week for you to keep you informed. If you do not get up this early, you can check out the website. I do upload the show to our YouTube page on the website. So all for one purpose, to keep you informed. If you want to be informed, but some people don't want to know. So what I'm going to tell you anyway. Story number 8. The local business climate. The Valley keeps losing businesses. That's a fact. When you drive by local commercial real estate that used to flourish with businesses, but instead now you may see abandoned lots, that's not good. Rite Aid has closed, Big Lots is restructuring, and many local stores in Youngstown have closed, and now Boardman Speedway on Midlothian Boulevard is closing. Now the question is why? What is taking place in the local economy for stores to now decide to close, and what are local officials doing about it? Folks, this story is still developing. This was story number 8, made to the top this week. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator. Me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well. That's www.method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
What does Method8inc.com Media Center have that I need?
Small prints, event consulting, photography, business consulting, technical consulting, entertainment consulting, fundraising advice, event videography, movies, news, publishing, media, books, entertainment, acting, broadcasting, public relations, access to the visual and performing arts, ink and black ink refills, audio recording, graphic design, theater, minor computer and cell phone repair, and they're located at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday. The list goes on and on.
Method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Oh yeah! And yes, we are chipmunks.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. Folks, we are into Columbus Day, or Indigenous Peoples Day is what they call it. Like I said, if you're Italian, you may want to say Columbus Day. He was an explorer. If you're an Indian or African American or somebody who has, may see it as, why we call it, but that it will be Indigenous People Day. Or some people still say Columbus Day, no matter what race you are. So, but it brings up the fact of some people just when you bring up this topic, a lot of people just don't want to know about the past. Well, me personally, I had some very hardcore history teachers when I was growing up. I had I think it was Kovac, who was my track coach. He was a history teacher, and I remember Mr. Murphy. I went to 7 different schools coming up, so I had a lot of different teachers, but I remember Mr. Murphy, and everybody knew who Mr. Murphy was because Mr. Murphy didn't sugarcoat history, and Kovac didn't either. And so I saw the reality of when I was being taught. So a lot of people may be watering these kids down, but my history teachers, I even remember Mr. Pillin, if he's still alive. He was one of my history teachers, and Mr. Carney. So I remember my history teachers, but they would never sugarcoat history. And when you go into their class, the class would be nice and organized, and they come out and, today's lesson class, we're going to talk about the Indians, the Pilgrims, and the history of America. And Mr. Carney would always have the radio surveys. We played history games. But the fact is, some stuff went on a long time ago, folks. Some people got slaughtered. Some races got raped and sold into slavery. And that's the truth. There were some explorers who traveled across the wild seas to get free from the carnage of what they called evil queens and kings. And here we are in America. You can't sugarcoat it. I mean, some people want to believe that all the history is honorable and upright and straightforward. No, it's brutal. And now we are in a day and age where it's getting even more brutal overseas, if that's a word. We got Israel and Iran and Hezbollah and the Hamas. And now in America, you still see things happening that is frightening. So shout out to my history teachers, and this Indigenous Peoples Day, or Columbus Day, however you want to celebrate it. Just take the time out to be thankful for what you got. And be thankful that we live in a time frame where you can reflect. And like I said, a lot of people don't want to know, but something went down some time ago, folks. Sunshine, blue skies, please go away. Love for tomorrow and another day. I like the future, 'cause the past is grim. I say day after day, I stay locked up in my room. I know to you, it might sound strange, but I wish it would rain. Oh, yeah, no wait no time, folks. Let's get to it. Story number 1. We may be late when it comes to lead pipes. That's another thing that happened in the past that we may be trying to correct. One article in the Washington Post explains how the EPA has gone to the extreme when it comes to lead pipes. The project aimed at eliminating the toxic threat to American children would cost tens of billions of dollars. The question now is it too late? As stated in the article, the Washington D.C. White House, they estimate that more than 9 million homes across the country are still supplied by lead pipelines, and the estimated cost to replace them would be $45 billion, according to the report. That's why story number 1 made it. Story number 2, the housing ideas could cause a lot of questions. NPR has a report focusing on housing with a possible solution, and what the report says is a new kind of public housing for all income levels. The entire idea made headlines after Hillendale Gateway launched a plan for 4 163 new middle mixed income, that's what they call it, mixed income apartments that will be majority owned by Maryland's Montgomery County. That's a lot. So now they're saying that the report emphasizes how this is a different kind of public housing compared to the traditional federally funded housing for only the very poor. Now that is not what got the story in, though. What got the story in is the fact that other states are following suit. They're saying this as a good idea. This is all while a need for affordable housing is catching the attention of everyone looking for a solution, especially if you're in the real estate business. That's my story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3, a new dark cloud over women's issues is causing a storm. Vanity Fair and The Hill both have articles focusing on how Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they plan to defund Planned Parenthood if Trump gets a second term. That's what the report says. Now, this is after Trump was able to get the abortion issue back on in front page news with the overturning of the Roe versus Wade story, if you remember. Now, this one issue has stirred the pot on an issue filled with testimonies of guilt. I mean, women telling their stories about abortion. There's deception in here. There's betrayal of boyfriends telling them that they're going to take care, they're going to have a happy family. There's bribery in this story, there's rape, and even sacrifice, folks. The vibes that have been felt since Roe versus Wade started so many years ago, and they're causing a storm of life-changing decisions to shoot back into top headlines, with new stories emerging every day right around election time, folks. This story is staying alive. That's why story number 3 made it. Story number 4. Are credit cards serving as a lifeline for America's finances? In economic hardship, credit cards have posed as a lifeline for many Americans, with a number of headlines emerging every day. CNBC has a report explaining how credit card spending growth is slowing after reaching record highs. Revolving debt fell 1.2%. The report goes on to explain how it may be too soon to say that things are progressing, though, because last year credit card debt spiked to a record 1.14 trillion. Now, the only thing that this report proves at the moment is that consumers may be pulling back, folks. This story is still developing. Let's get into the top 8 this week. Well, folks, there are top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that I made this week. I'll be right back with the top 4, so don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator, me, Brian West. I'll be right back. Tune in to Method 8's YouTube channel to check out the top interviews that made it throughout the years and months. Visit method8inc.com. Check out all the community interviews if you want to check it out. Method8inc.com. Buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Oh, yeah. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. Folks, a lot of people are coming up to me and say, Brian, how are you doing? Are you okay? I've been praying for you, brother. I've been praying for you. You know, because my mom, she's been suffering through cancer. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of hate seeing people suffer, you know. And you know, we were headed into this Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day, but, you know, people worry about mental health. But I read a mental health book, and it says the number one way to get through mental health problems is to think positive. And it's hard. It's hard because life is tough. If somebody tells you that life is easy, you have a lot of trials, tribulations. You got to learn. You got to keep learning. You got to exercise your brain. Some people are stuck in one lane. They're pessimistic. They think that everybody hates them. But as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, it should remind us that life itself is not easy. There's things that happen in the past, civilizations that get conquered, but there are people who are positive thinkers, and you have to think positive. I was a sailor, so I saw the brunt of a war. I didn't see combat, but I see war, and you got to think positive. So, even with things happening in my life, and what would it mean if I just gave up on my beliefs, my hopes, my dreams? There are people who are not used to seeing certain things, and certain people from my neck of the woods coming out and just giving top 8 news stories, so I think positive. I do have some Indian in my blood, so I may have some Italian in my blood, so I know I have African American blood, so what am I to think negative about the future? I try to think positive. My mom is sick. I say, Mom, I just see her getting up. My mother has gotten up every day in her state of mind and lived her life. A lot of people do. So this ended this People Day. I give a shout out to all those people who have lived a life and have found something to live for, even in through hardship, brutality, all types of things. You gotta rise up. I'll rise up. I like the waves. I'll rise up. Let's waste no time, folks. Let's get to it. Story number 5. Special moment for us there. Columbus Indigenous People Day and the philosophies and theologies that come in America, especially at these times where there's uncertainty, but we must find love in a place of despair. Story number 5. Getting a hold of the inflation dragon. ABC News has a headline published October 8th. A report claims that inflation has returned to normal. The report explains how right around election time, the nation's inflation rate has quietly returned to normal. This is at a time when inflation has remained a top issue, thus getting the story into the top 8. That's why story number 5 made it this week, folks. Big head. Story number 6. Iran, Israel, and other foreign wars could be dragging in the West. That means the United States of America could be dragging us all in, sucking us all in, our allies, enemies, all that stuff. Now, after a live speech on YouTube was aired by Benjamin Netanyahu, spewing out his plan to spread visions of tourism and trade with Saudi Arabia in the aftermath of a conquered Iran. That's what he said. Now, war vibes began to spread even further across his platform after he made this speech. Now, Politico has a headline calling Iran desperate, according to a retired U.S. general. Now, the article says that the country is cornered in what appears to be a show of Israel gaining ground with funding and support from allies. Now, Ukraine stories are also emerging in what looks like a defeated Ukraine. Now, each story has the West leaking aid, money, and weapons, with taxpayers now wondering if any money is left to take care of home. Folks, this story is gaining steam, especially around election time. So story number 6 also made it to the top 2 this week. Big. Story number 7 and the top 2 international headline and developing news story that made this week. I got your story. I got your story. Give me an M. Yeah, I got your mediation. I got your mediation. Story number 7. What does that spell? Top 8 stories. Story number 7. Hurricane headaches. Insurance, FEMA, evacuation plans. Florida and many oceanfront states have seen their fair share of hurricanes. Now the question is, how do you rebuild after the storm? This is all while chaos emerged from Hurricane Helene, and now Hurricane Milton, with sustained winds in the Category 4 range, leaving millions of Floridians left to evacuate Before the airing of this show, folks, just when things were calming down and aid was being poured in, the next storm in line was just touching down and tornadoes were spotted. Folks, keep those people in prayer, your thoughts, whatever you do, because this is very, very sad news. Story number 7, big. Story number 8, in the top international headline and developing news story that made this week. Folks, you've got to be optimistic in times of struggles. Yeah, we've got to be positive in times of defeat. Ooh, yeah, we've got to feel victorious when we're down. Pass the offering and plate around so I pay the bills. Story number 8, mediation. That's what we love. The AI fears didn't happen overnight, folks. It was predicted a long time ago. Perfect way to end the show. In the birthing stages of the computer, many analysts saw a future filled with artificial intelligence. We've got to be optimistic, though. Fortune has a piece explaining the outcome. Drugs, people on drugs, depressed, no jobs, explaining what AI is and will do to the now evolving job market. No jobs, no money to pay the bills, people are strung out. What has this story trending is what analysts feel AI is going to do to the job market. What is it going to do to the job market? The article says that AI, artificial intelligence, is going to take over human jobs and will put millions of people out of work. The article is brief, but serves as a jobs warning, with investors now figuring out what AI companies have been doing all along with the money that they've been investing, with those investment dollars. Folks, if you did not know, radio stations used to be filled with people. But in came AI. Took all those jobs, folks. This story is still developing. That's why story number 8 made it to the top this week. Oh, well, folks, I hope you got something out of today's program. Those are our top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories. I hope you got something out of today's program. I always get something out of the research. As usual, I thank all the news outlets, the journalists, people on the front lines. You deserve all the credit. I'm just the media, the man in the middle, navigating your story just to keep people informed. If you want to show us some support here at Method 8, it doesn't take much. All you do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Or you can stop at the store at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio. Folks, have a great Columbus or Indigenous Peoples Day, whatever you decide to celebrate. I like to say this: stay positive, folks, in these hard times. You got to think be optimistic. I am out here. I'll be back next week. Look to over 200 more stories, Lord willing, just to keep you informed. Thank you for tuning to the Mediator this week with me, Brian West. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.